Well, for more on the Korean Peninsula tensions and their possible impact on the DPRK's economy, I'm joined by Karl Friedhoff, live from Chicago. He's a fellow focusing on public opinion and foreign policy at the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So how would you characterize the overall health of the DPRK's economy right now?
Well, reports coming out of the Bank of Korea in South Korea, which does a lot of work on this, they estimate that the DPRK's economy is growing at 1 to 2% per year. However, a lot of analysts think that this is too low. They put the estimate more at 3 to 5%. And so it looks like North Korea's economy is actually humming along. We've seen the expansion of black markets where the regular citizens now have more access to a wider array of goods, and private businesses are now actually allowed to seek profit. So they still have to produce some of these state quotas and provide goods to the government, but once they've met that quota, they're allowed to go out and seek clients to produce profit just like any other business.
So we're seeing this growth when there are already sanctions on the country. So then what impact do you expect these additional sanctions to have on the DPRK's economy?
That's largely going to depend on China. Right now, we have about 11 years of experience to show that China is not going to fully enforce these sanctions. They've said that they had banned coal in the past, and yet we saw ships from North Korea continue to dock at shipyards in China that are known coal depots. And so it's really going to have a lot to do with that. So far, China has talked a good game, but what the United States hopes is that China is going to back it up and truly enforce these sanctions and ban the items that it says it's going to ban.
And how critical is that to not only relations between the two countries, but really pressuring the DPRK?
Pressuring the DPRK is going to be key. I don't think that there is really a way that North Korea is going to denuclearize because of these sanctions, but it is an important message to North Korea that the United States is not going to back off. So by doing this, we need to ensure that we can try to place these sanctions forcefully and perhaps then seek diplomacy later when the United States has more of a powerful stance.
Now let's look at some of the drivers in the DPRK's economy. How critical is oil to the country's growth?
Oil is obviously very critical. That's the one kind of element that they say if China is willing to cut oil shipments off, that would bring North Korea to its knees. More importantly right now is the focus is on minerals. Minerals account for about 40% of North Korea's exports. Textiles, which I believe are excluded from the most recent round of sanctions, are about 25%. The thing that I think deserves more attention is its export of human labor. It's about 50,000 workers, according to one UN estimate, that are sent abroad to work in places like China, like the Middle East, and perhaps in Africa. And UN estimates put the earnings from that at about $1.2 billion for the North Korean regime. Cutting that off is going to be key.
So outside of that, how reliant is the DPRK on other exports?
Can you repeat that question? Sorry, I didn't pick that up.
Sure. Outside of human capital, what are some of the main exports that the DPRK is reliant on?
So minerals, we're going to talk about things like coal. There are several other minerals like valuable minerals, gold and such that are also being exported. But coal is really the main thing, and that's why it's been focused on as a part of the sanctions. Again, we're going to have to see if China is willing to step up and enforce. The textile industry is also important for their exports, again, about 25% of their economy. And there are recent reports that China is actually operating these textile manufacturing places in North Korea, employing North Koreans. Of course, this may be a violation of UN sanctions, and so this may be a target of future sanctions if indeed it is true.
We'll have to see if those are, in fact, actually founded in truth. But in terms of the DPRK's economy over the last 5 to 10 years, what are some of the key changes that you've noticed?
So some of the key changes are this kind of expansion of the black markets. These are still looked down upon officially by the regime, but they seem to be allowing them to expand. This has really given the everyday citizen the chance to have more access to a broader array of goods and to kind of meet their own needs. And the other big change is the ability of private business owners to go out and try to seek profit after they've met their state quota. You know, these two changes, I think, working in coordination, show that a rising economy is going to really lift all boats, and I think that's what's happening in North Korea right now.
So for people who aren't familiar, what is the business landscape like within the DPRK?
Well, the business landscape is obviously very restricted. Everything is run through the state. So anybody who is going to be doing business abroad, there are business people in North Korea that travel outside of North Korea to conduct business, primarily in China. All of that goes through the state, and it's all highly profitable for some of the regime because there's always a payoff that's going to be involved. Of course, if you want to make money, that means you have to pay someone to make that money.
And just quickly, your outlook for the DPR's economy, given what's already happening at the moment?
At the moment, it looks like the DPRK economy is going to kind of continue along. I don't really believe that China is going to fully enforce sanctions because it does not want to bring North Korea to its knees or seriously cripple it in any way. And U.S. sanctions, because there is so little business being done between the United States and North Korea, South Korea and North Korea, and Japan and North Korea, the sanctions placed by any of these three countries can really have little effect. So I expect North Korea to continue to be successful on the economic line.
All right, thank you so much for your insights. Karl Friedhoff, a fellow at the Chicago Council on Global Affairs.